Bronwyn.
So, John, I really appreciate your comment that the current evidence of forest and diet is correlation and not causation. The problem is that it's very difficult to randomize forests and landscapes. So, I personally choose to feel that that evidence is at least somewhat convincing. So then,
I don't disagree.
So then, to the point of what actions do we take, and in terms of messages for policymakers, is then a message that we should be encouraging farmers to retain trees on their land, and communities to retain forests within their landscapes. An important message. This is a question that's very hotly debated in the conservation community, often referred to as land sharing, land sparing debate, and debated often at C4 as well. So the problem is that to answer these questions, we need to look at the entire system. We need to look at land tenure, absolutely. There's tons of evidence that says how much forest and how many trees are retained by communities and farmers is very much dependent on what sort of tenure they have. We need to look at institutions. We need to look at the entire system, and that's why I think that this program of nutrition-sensitive landscapes and the systems-level approach is so exciting.
Okay. Now, I know that a lot of people will be frustrated, but we're going to be kicked out of this room in 5 minutes. And I think I wanted to reassure you on two fronts. One is Alan DeBra, who's the research leader, is going to tell you kind of what things he heard, I think, and a bit of a summary. And then I want to tell you kind of what next steps we're going to take. And then you'll know some of the key people to contact, Anne, Alan, Rosalind, and others, so that we can, and Bronwyn, and yeah, I mean, so you're meeting some of the actors, at least on the CGIR side, coming together. And I think I feel like somebody who started a fire and then leaves it burning. And so I apologize that we don't have time to get everybody, but I think it would be good to kind of use this as a step in a journey rather than some kind of ultimate event, which it can't be, okay? So I'd like to invite Alan to share a few thoughts of his from what he got from this. And then I want to tell you a little bit about what some of our next steps are and invite you to join us.
Great, thanks, John. This is a really challenging session to come and give a 5-minute spiel about what it was about. What I heard a lot of is well, we talked a lot about systems, right? And the thing that I wanted to take out of, or for you to take out of this, is that systems are not static things. They're dynamic, they change, and they're path dependent. And I think we need to keep that in mind as we do research. And the type of research we're talking about is that, well, there are two things that are going on. One is that systems sometimes suffer from shocks, and that's what resilience is about, right? We want to figure out how we can intervene, and that's what I want to talk about next, in these systems, because I think that's what we're talking about. We danced around it a little bit, but what we really want to do is intervene in these systems so that shocks are not as severe as they would otherwise be, and might change the complete path dependency of the system and the ways we might measure that system. So I'm kind of talking in a theoretical frame, which I think is something that we need to grasp quite well. Now, these interventions that we would want to do on these systems, whatever intervention that they might be, we need to think about how the incentives change, and that's, and I'm being an economist now, which I am. But I think if we don't think about the incentives, then we might not change the interventions that we might think of, and whether they be land tenure, whether they be ways of trying to preserve ecosystems. If we don't think about the incentives of the types, and all of the incentives, we'll miss things. And then what we want to, and the thing that I think the systems approach, my thinking about the systems approach is, if these incentives change, if we change the incentives well, how then does that affect the system? And not just the income or the dietary diversity score. We need to think about more than just that, and particularly the unintended consequences of those changes. So I think I have one more minute or so. I thought that there were some really nice insights, for instance, that I think I completely agree with the notion that agricultural research has been really less successful about promoting diversified diets. And it is very resilience sensitive. I just came from a legume meeting in which I heard breeders talking about how they're breeding legumes ad nauseum to reduce, to make them more pest resistant, to make them more drought resistant. So we know that that's taking place. I think it's a great opportunity, though, to use this ag research to go and perturb systems and see how they change and to try to really measure all of these things. The last thing I thought that we should keep in mind is that ecosystem services are often not valued. So if we think about the ecosystem services, I'm thinking of the forests, the land, the soil qualities, and water, and I'm probably missing a bunch, so you can hammer me. Biodiversity, exactly. So we want to make sure that, I think one of the ways we might want to think of the incentives is changing incentives to preserve those ecosystem services. And I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
So let me tell you a little bit about the next steps and maybe some ideas. So one is that within the CGIR and the partnerships we have now, one of the things we've started to do is a number of studies to look at this in different places, in Zambia and Kenya and Bangladesh. You heard about some of them. And engage with others that we work with, and Francois and IDRC team have been part of that. So we're just trying to get, I guess, inculcated in our research a bit more the thinking about this and some practice in how to do it. So that's going on now. And there's a process of bringing together at kind of higher level all the systems programs. And so Polly who's gone off to another side event on drylands, humid tropics, aquatic agricultural systems, forests and trees. And so we'll be meeting to discuss kind of how that can be kind of co-developed and co-owned between these different CRPs, because it's much more than one CRP. And so I'm happy to kind of push it to begin with, but I don't want to take it very far without other people joining in, and I think that's going to be very important. And I appreciate Bronwyn and Robert is here and others as well, and biodiversity plays a key linkage role there. So that's something we're doing. I was very impressed by some of the learning and networking that we heard about in South Asia region. I think some of the people are here that were involved in that. And I think there's some real benefits of networking a lot of these projects and experiences that are going on. And there's different, IDRC has their networks and other people have their networks. I think really trying to co-learn around this area, develop a kind of common language, value listening to each other and what we have to say will be very important. And so I kind of invite you to join in that process, more of an organic process rather than a hierarchical or defined process. And I think there'll be ways of stimulating and supporting that kind of convening as well. So I thank you very much for your participation, and I apologize that we didn't have more time to kind of gather the rich experiences in the room. I thank very much the participants for painting a nice picture and raising this, and I think we've had a good discussion today. So thanks again, everyone.